All right, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about who's ducking who, Brian Castano or Jermell Charlo. It seems like that's a real early conversation to have, but there's a lot of fans on my page that keep talking about it, and we found some interesting information that points to who it is most likely that will hold up this fight. And guess what? It's not Jermell Charlo. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So we are going to talk about the aftermath of an absolutely terrific fight that took place last Saturday between Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano for the Undisputed title at 154. The Undisputed title means all four of the belts. That's the WBA, the WBC, the WBO, and the IBF. Brian Castano was the WBO champion, and Jermell Charlo owns the rest of them. So after the fight took place, there was a talk that started hitting my page about Jermell Charlo sounding like he doesn't want the rematch. And I read what was said, I saw what was said, heard what was said, and I have to admit that he did seem less than enthusiastic at that time in that press conference. But I thought that it was something that was understandable, you know, considering the fact that he just got out of a tough fight. He wanted to be the undisputed champion of the world. He foresaw himself doing that. He wasn't able to do it, even though he was the odds-on favorite to win the fight. He failed in that regard. He kept his belts, but he had failed. So I figured, hey, man, you know, give the guy a couple days. But, you know, the press or the conversations keep coming onto my page. So I figured, let me keep looking at the situation. And guess what we ran into today? The person that actually said, and this came out on Boxing Scene, that there's a chance that they will not be, that it's unlikely that the two will be rematching soon. And guess what the cause is? It's the Undisputed title itself, and the fact that every one of those belts have mandatory fighters, mandatory challengers to the sanctioning body. So Brian Castano said that Brian Castano, he talked about Brian Castano. He also talked about Jermell Charlo's mandatories. Now, as far as the article said, and as far as I recall, the highest likelihood for there to be the guy that most likely would be the mandatory for the WBO is a guy named Tim Tszyu, who is Costa Tszyu's son. He's actually a pretty big star in Australia. So Brian Castano has an opportunity, will most likely have an opportunity to fight Tim Tszyu. Jermell Charlo also has, for the WBC, he has Erickson Lubin as the number one ranked, to the highest ranked guy. The WBC is kind of weird. They don't always say that the number one guy is going to be the mandatory, but I think Erickson Lubin has probably pretty much established himself as the top guy in the WBC rankings. And really, I think probably the number two or three guy. Well, I'd be fair to Brian Castano and say the number two guy in the weight division. And there's also a guy named Bakram, and I'm not even going to try to kill his last name, but it's just to call him Bakram, who is highly rated for the IBF. And those are the people that are set up to be the mandatories. I'm not sure who the mandatory is for the WBA, but the most irrelevant part is that even ahead of time, Brian Castano's manager, whose name is Sebastian Contursi, is saying that Brian Castano, might have a mandatory, and that mandatory would be Tim Tszyu. And I'm telling you, as far as the money that can be made for the fight, if he was to fight Tim Tszyu over there in the UK, in Australia, that would be a very, very big fight, especially after Brian Castano's stock went up after having gotten a draw against Jermell Charlo. And see, that's what I think that there's a risk of from Brian Castano's people. And like, if I was advising him and I was being sneaky, right, and trying to say in the job, and that's the job of, I shouldn't say sneaky, But if I was trying to do the job of his manager, right, and say, hey, what is the most lucrative thing that we can do right now? Really, the most lucrative thing that Brian Castano could do is to fight Tim Tszyu, beat Tim Tszyu in Australia, and then after that, then fight, because that's a spot where you can make a lot of money in a fight. And to show that that's the case, my understanding is that for the Teofimo Lopez fight, the Triller wants to make sure that they take that fight over to the Australia, because in the past the Australian government has subsidized fights and the pay of, consequently the pay of fighters, like they did when they brought in Manny Pacquiao and when he fought Jeff Horn. So the boxing in Australia, 4 fighters that are well known there seem to be really lucrative. They seem to get big crowds, and Brian Castano would actually have an ability to leverage the increased intention that he's gotten off of the Jermell Charlo fight. And then pretty much, and I don't want to say it in too bad a way, because I like Brian Castano. I don't have anything against the guy. I just got things against the people that continue to try to dump on Jermell Charlo for no real good reason. However, there is a likelihood or a chance that Brian Castano can hide and basically take advantage of the draw that he got, and, you know, kind of do what Tyson Fury did when Tyson Fury took advantage of the indignation of certain sports fans when he got the decision over Deontay Wilder. So Brian Castano could be taking advantage of the indignation, not go right back into the rematch, and then go to get a big payday over in Australia. So, and I think that that's a good chance that they would do that. They might even try to take, they might even be hoping that Tim Tszyu becomes a mandatory. And then you know what that is. That's not too difficult to make happen with the WBO. Just make it happen. You know what I mean? At least that's what I think of the WBO. Now, all of this, though, just really heightens a problem that we have in boxing, and that is this undisputed championship between 4 belts. That it is so hard to get a champion in 4 of the divisions, because once you get one guy being a champion, there's all kind of politics and nonsense going through that. And so where you see divisions like where you have somebody in that division that is a very difficult fight for people, say that like a Deontay Wilder, a Gary Russell Jr., or a Guillermo Rigondeaux, that gets in the way of Undisputed, because you have other fighters that just won't fight for the belt. But even in this case, when you get it, you still have all the mandatories and stuff that come up that can prevent these things from happening. But anyway, just wanted to talk to you about that briefly. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.